All right, welcome back to Box of the Battlefield. And Dave is moving along with his Brummbar at great speed, and I'm going to catch up now with the groundwork. Now, fortunately, uh, we're going to have some not flat ground. There's going to be nothing flat about where this tank traveled. It went through buildings, it was a building busting tank, through walls and through small buildings. This thing would crawl right through. So it was designed to do so. So let's put it in its place. Now this morning, I'm going to do a little bit of hairspray on our little lamppost here, and I'm going to demonstrate that. But first, before we get into that, I just want to point out some neat things that might come into play later on. Barbican make a fantastic set of bricks, which you're going to need if you're going to do a Brummbar in its spot. Um, Now, most of us have a spares parts box for tank parts and what have you. I have the same, but I also have a box of balsa wood and basswood and little pieces of dollhouse furniture, cord around and what have you. So all these things are going to come into play when putting the Brummbar in its place. Now, one of the difficulties with that sort of groundwork is the suspension on the tank. Now, um, that creates a problem, obviously, because we don't always um, know what groundwork it's going to go on while we're building the tank. Sometimes the tank is going to be a standalone for maybe 2 years, and then a light goes on, or a book comes out, or a movie, Enemy at the Gates, or whatever comes out. Obviously, not with this tank, but um, you get your juices flowing. And one of the things you might want to do is take a very good model that's a standalone and give it some groundwork. Give it um, some little extra. Okay, so one of the difficulties lies here. Uh, you've built a tank, beautiful tank, Panzer IV, and it's been sitting for a year and a half. You've taken it to a few shows and what have you, but you've been, like I say, you've been enthusiastic about putting it on a base. But the suspension is rock solid, the track is all on, and you can't put it on, other than a road, you can't go very far. Well, this solves that problem. This little stretcher here, I built, all I did was glue a little couple of pieces of wood together. This is, I think, 3/8 by 3/16. But as long as you have it steady, don't have any flex in it, and these tanks obviously don't weigh a lot, so it's not like it's a bending thing. But the weight of the tank is not the problem here. But you have to make it solid to get inside your groundwork. So each tank that you build, if it's a Tiger tank or King Tiger, Sherman tanks, they're all going to be a different size. You can't mass produce these to fit your tanks. Fortunately, with our little Shelf Queen series that we're doing as well, about, here's an old Panzer IV that I built probably in the 90s, and I've just recently started to remove the paint and start to prime it and get it back going again. But what you have to do is make your little stretcher. And like I say, I've written Lang on here, so this is for a Lang project, but for our case, it's going to fit the Brummbar and this Panzer IV. And in a very early video that we did, I harmonized the paint colors with the Lang. So this dates back pretty far away. But what you want to do is just have this little stretcher fit just on the inside size of the tracks of, in this case, the Panzer IV. So obviously with your King Tiger and your Tiger 1 and Panthers, you're going to use the same idea. You're going to cut this just to fit on the inside of the track, and that's just for visual. If I lay this down, cover it with groundwork like so, no one is ever going to see this basswood stretcher once you start putting your stones and your bricks and your pieces of wood and what have you. it's going to be well hidden away because it's a little, um, it's not the same width of the track. It's just a little shorter, maybe by a 1/16 of an inch. So cut that to fit, and if I balance it off right, you should be able to see a little bit of track on either side. And that's where you want to go. It just creates just a little more hide and seek if you make it too wide. So you can do it, but making it a little smaller is the better way to go. And it'll still support the tank. There's no problem with supporting the tank. Now, why did I do that? Why am I going to put this on this funny little stretcher base? Now I have a lot of play. The tank is going to sit on here, but I can put this anywhere in the groundwork I want at any angle. So in Dave's case with his Brummbar, I can lie this down in any direction, and the tank can just sit here like so. A situation like that, riding up, riding a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, it's not going to matter. And I'll just leave Dave safely over there so that I can demonstrate this a little better with a shelf clean that's not going to go flying off and ruin our project. So now you can cut your foam with your rasp. You can make your contours in your foam, and the tank can just sit anywhere you want. It doesn't matter how you cut your foam as far as the groundwork, but just don't. Greg Chillar is perfect at high grades, steep grades, but most of his tanks are knocked out, slid off roads and what have you. So Greg is the best in the world at doing that sort of thing. But we have an operational tank here, so the grade in which we're going to tilt it up or tilt it down is important. Don't lose sight of the fact that these tanks are still in service. They haven't been knocked out or slid off a road or anything. So just keep the grade part. I mean, these tanks weigh 30, 40, 50 tons. They're like locomotives. They can't just climb for the sake of climbing. So keep all those thoughts in. You don't see tanks in books in an operational setting climbing grades like this. It just doesn't look right. They could do it for sure, but they don't lend themselves to dioramas that we're doing with small little bases. So just keep your grade soft, and like I say, you can rotate it any way you want. Cut your foam, and then the fun begins. Now, one of the neat things about the Brummbar is it's a stocky bulldog type of tank. I mean, there's a very short barrel on it. It's got a boxy turret. It doesn't have that 75 millimeter gun sticking out the end like a Panther or Panzer IV or anything like that. So I use those things in dioramas to point at things. So I'll rotate the turret, have the barrel stretch out, but right at the end of that barrel there's probably a neat fire hydrant or a dog or a something interesting on the ground, sort of hidden underneath the length of that barrel. And I'll explain that. I'll get into the that sort of feature in our diorama as we move forward. But one of the things I am going to use is this little lamppost, and I've hairsprayed it, and it's I'm going to demonstrate the hairspray technique in a second. A lot of guys, when they talk about hairspray, quite often it's an American or a German or Russian tank, and they want to make it look as if it's early spring or late winter, and of course whitewash. And that's fine. Everybody's done it, and moving forward we'll still do it some more. But there's so many ways of using hairspray to show chipping and what have you, and I'm going to just do it on this little lamppost for you in a second. So let me set up the airbrush to do so, and then we'll talk a little bit more about our little diorama here. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch up to you in a minute. Okay, so in Dave's Brummbar little vignette, one of the things that I want to put in is this little mini art. lamppost. So I'm not sure if back then, 75 years ago, kids used to chain their bikes up to posts like this or anything, but I'm going to show in this neighborhood of this post, you know, chain marks and maybe some bricks flying through the air. So all in here is all going to be chipped up, you know, very close to the ground. The bricks flying from the building that is collapsed near to it. Again, pieces of wood and that sort of thing are going to be flying around. But you see it in model railroading where they have lampposts like this. And it was common when we were children to go to our local hobby shops, chain our bikes to a post or to a bike rack or what have you. And if you ever looked at the thing that you're chaining it up to, it's all chipped, it's all battered. So one of the things I'm going to show in this is that same effect. Now, you can see on this top of this M10, I did some chipping, same way. I painted this with the iron color, and then right along the top here, where the crew would climb in over the top, they'd lie stuff down, or they'd drop a hammer, or a little shell exchange between the used and full shells. All that sort of thing would take place up and around this part of the tank. This tank was also hard to climb onto because of the sloping sides. So there'd be a lot of challenges to guys using this tank as far as getting on. I mean, almost if you didn't have a ladder, you were doomed. But in any event, so you have to show that. You have the soldiers used steel-toed shoes and what have you. All those things take place or come into play when you're painting a tank like this. So this tank isn't finished yet. It's one of my projects moving forward. So don't start to evaluate this in any way on the video. This tank has got, you know, it's about 90% finished. So, but most important is to show the hairspray technique. That obviously this tank is not a whitewash tank, but the hairspray technique has certainly been used. So I'm just going to give this a second spray. So, and let me talk about the second spray. About 1 hour ago, I sprayed this for the first time off camera and just let it air dry. I didn't use a hair dryer or anything. I just let it dry on its own. A nice coat of hairspray, and I use this hairspray, and I think it's a 3-hold, and it's just one that was recommended to me by Mike Rinaldi, and he talks about this type of hairspray in his books. But there are other hairspray and chipping fluids on the market from Megan, from AK, and I think Vallejo now has one too. So it's just user friendly, and it's half a bottle, so I don't want it to go to waste. So I'm going to put on the second coat and let it dry. And you're going to stay about a foot away, maybe 14 inches away. And the second coat isn't as thick as the first. The first one sort of goes on, maybe hitting the button on here 5 or 6 times. Sorry, on the first coat, you might spray about 10 little zaps of this, hitting it everywhere you can, underneath and all the way around. Now sometimes, of course, you squeeze in that 1 foot gap, but try not to. And then just let it air dry. And the next step is to prepare to paint it. So make sure that you have nothing else going on for the next hour and a half in your little modeling world, because once this stuff dries, you have to respond to it. So you can't go out and be starting to walk your dog or anything and sort of forget about this part of it. You don't have a huge window here after your second coat to start using your hairspray. But one of the best hairspray paintbrushes is a paintbrush that's been on the market for a long paintbrushes, oh, I would imagine in the early 70s. And they haven't changed. They haven't changed in 40 years. But they're excellent for what we're about to demonstrate. And I always go to this brush. They're about $2 or less than that at your local hobby shop. Here at Hornet Hobbies, they're around $2 a piece. And they just lend themselves, because the bristles are uneven, very durable. They lend themselves to the abuse that you're about to give it on these on the hairspray technique. You can use it on tanks, of course. You can use it on any, a lamppost, or I used it on the underneath part of all the steel plate that's underneath there. I painted it green, put the weathering material on, or excuse me, let me back that up. I painted it dark green, gave the plate a shot of hairspray, let it dry thoroughly, and then went at it with one of these underneath here. Because this, if you see in photographs, underneath here, and the camera probably can't pick it up, but underneath here is a lot of wear and tear, stones and gravel and what have you thrown up underneath the tank. And this particular paintbrush is ideal for doing what we're going to do. Don't take your your Series 7 Winsor Newton paintbrush and start to knock off paint off, using the hairspray technique. You're going to ruin your brushes. These are excellent, and I think most of the guys around here use them now. So this lamppost is nearly dry. So what I'm going to do is just remove the M10 from our little project here. Now the important part next is, once you get the paint on, and I'm just going to use Tamiya XF71, but you have to mix this with water. And the green coat on my M10 is painted with water. It just lends itself. If you use the lacquer thinner, you can still get away with it, but you're going to have to really scrub, and it just doesn't work nearly as well as if you use just regular tap water. So one of the Mike Rinaldi's tank art books are the best books on this subject. The only thing that Mike didn't do is he didn't, in bold print or in highlight, he didn't talk at great depth about how important the water is. It's certainly in the Rinaldi books, but it should be a much bolder sentence, because one of the common things is people coming in the hobby shop to say, I tried the hairspray technique and I mixed my paint, with my lacquer thinner, and I used it properly, and I had my white wash going on. I put the white paint on. I started to scrub with the brushes that you recommended, and nothing happened. And I can't tell you guys how important it is to use tap water for the second coat versus our normal leveling thinner or this lacquer thinner here. It must be water. So that said, let's get on with airbrushing the lamppost. Like I say, I'm just taking before we paint it green, let's talk about what color it is now. And right now it is about, I would say 70% XF9 and about 15% of these two colors, which is XF27, which is black green, and rubber black is also in it. Now I always paint with the sort of ish factor. It's not exactly 70 and it's not exactly 15% each on these. You're gonna know once you look at, say, a sewer grid over in your neighborhood. That's the kind of iron color that I chose to use. So this is basically the color of the sewer grid that's out in front of Hornet Hobbies. So it's a very dark, well-worn iron color. All right. So as far as the color goes, if your lamppost isn't exactly the same deep dark red that mine is, don't panic. sewer grid colors come in a lot of colors. So, you know, you have a little bit of play. So don't worry about the exact proportions of these paints. Just stay on the strong side of the XF9. All right, so and the lamppost was painted those colors about 3 days ago. So they had a firm grip on the lamppost, thoroughly dried, and then we proceeded with the hairspray. Okay, so just before we start the airbrush, I've just mixed the color. Now, how much percentage? This percentage is about 50-50. 50% water, 50% XF71. And I have my paintbrush ready to roll. And the tester's product on this is number 8702. And they make a series, as most of you probably know, probably with a package with 3 in it. But you probably don't even have to run out and buy this. You've probably had it sitting in your sort of spares paintbrush rack for the last 15 years. But nevertheless, if you have to run out and get it, it's 8702. All right, let's fire up the compressor and now I have no idea what color the lamppost might have been hanging around Dave's Brummbar back in Berlin in 1945. This is a decorative part of Berlin, you know, say a little pretty little area that all those towns sort of had. So give the lamppost some good coverage. The mini art sets that they're coming out with now, they're coming out with all kinds of beautiful sets. They're coming out with wells and all kinds of different equipment for railroading and that sort of thing. You can even use the hairspray technique on some railroad track, you know, all that sort of stuff. But they're coming out with some signals and just all kinds of things moving forward with mini art. So it's fantastic. So we're gonna have a lot of this kind of thing. I can see it moving forward in our diorama settings. Now this lamppost set actually came out probably 5 years ago, but I still use it all the time. All right, so I'm just gonna let this dry for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Just let it dry to the touch, and then we're gonna take some water and our paintbrush and then start to remove it. So give this just a second to dry. It'll dry off camera, and then we'll be back to look at that in about 2 minutes time. Okay, so we're about to chip. So it's the green paint is dried over the last 2 or 3 minutes. And so let's just start with where a child might chain his bike up to a post like this. I'm gonna just start at the bottom and get the water on. So I just lay the water on, and I'm not trying to chip yet. I'm just getting the water to activate the hairspray. And as Mike Rinaldi always says, no scratch is too small. And you, almost microscopic scratches are starting to appear. And you can see I'm not pressing too hard. The key is to get the water on, let it sit for about 25 seconds or so, 30 seconds, and then just get back to it. See how quickly the hairspray will. Don't just sort of get on there and start this sort of rubbing and all that sort of stuff. It's not going to happen. Just be very delicate with what we're doing here. And also too, especially if you're doing it on a tank, say the M10, you have to turn into a 35th scale man and track yourself. You know, you got to climb up on the tank. Don't just hairspray your tank for the sake of hairspraying your tank and put the scratching, helter-skelter on the body of the tank. Or in this case, this lamppost. You know, a kid chaining his bike to this post, that would have been a common thing to do. So don't go outside those funny little boundaries and start scratching all the way up this post here. Those scratches will be very tiny, just caused by standing in a city full of wind and just weathered time of paint, winters and all that sort of stuff. Those kind of things wear on a coat of paint, there's no question. But for starters, we have to lock the little boy's bike up and then show the chain marks. And you can see, let's just use it. You can just see the delicate little scratches that are starting to appear. Now in Dave's Brummbar little vignette, obviously the scratches are going to come heavy. It's probably early 1945, the spring, probably March or April, and the scratching is going to be heavy just because of the thrown bricks and that sort of thing. So we'll just see how I just drop the water on there and let it sit for half a minute or so. So at the bottom of the lamppost, once again, this little part is going to catch building material and that sort of thing. And once again, just standing there for the last 20 years. The regular wear and tear on a paint job are the kinds of things that we're going to show. And don't forget too, just before World War II, the Germans didn't have a lot of money to send a crew around to paint these things. These might be painted now on a regular basis in your hometown in 2018, but certainly not in Germany in the early 30s. So the wear and tear of paint showed for a while. Fortunately, in our neck of the woods here, there wouldn't be this kind of chipping on a lamppost anywhere that I know. but different times. All right, so now we have the post really, and then we'll start to work up the body of the lamppost. And like I say, other than the worn areas due to 20 years of wear and tear from wind and snow and that sort of stuff, that's the only wear that's going to be maybe possibly up here. And don't forget the also too serious fighting in Berlin, so ricocheting bullets and that sort of stuff, they're going to certainly leave their mark on an iron lamppost for sure. So some of the other things you might want to add moving forward, but you have to be very subtle about it, are bird droppings and that sort of thing. But so many times when guys want to add that part of a paint job to their things, they overdo it. I don't think birds emptied out like, say, a pterodactyl, so keep that in mind. We're talking starlings and sparrows and that sort of stuff. Don't go crazy with bird droppings. One of the beautiful modelers in United States is a man by the name of Chuck Doan, and that guy has it all the percentages worked out. When he puts, say, bird droppings on a little ladder or something that he's doing, it's always pretty precise. He's one of the certainly guys that I go to get techniques and what have you. He's normally published. I don't see him on YouTube, but he's probably on, and I just haven't looked up Chuck Doan. But if you guys want to, he's certainly on the internet, that's for sure. And he's one of the best there is. So for this kind of thing, and techniques and what have you, look up an American by the name of Chuck Doan. He's fantastic, and the techniques that he has blow your mind. He's fantastic. So, all right, we're just about finished. We just now what'll happen moving forward on this is I'll probably, and I'll do it on camera, but not today, is this will probably receive, moving forward, based on Dave's color scheme on his tank, this will receive also an oil wash and that sort of thing. There will be probably pastels wrapped around the little part of the post here. So so this isn't finished. This is just, maybe 75% finished. Just once I start putting the groundwork together for Dave's tank, this lamppost will take on a few extra colors and scratches and what have you. But by and large, this is about 75% finished. And as you guys can see, this whole lamppost, including the chipping and the paint job of green and everything, it's a very fast and easy job. I would suggest that paintbrush on lamppost was probably all of about 15 to 20 minutes. So don't think that you're going to get bogged down. You've just worked hard on your Brummbar or your Panther tank or M10, and now I've got to go forward and spend another 2 weeks on your groundwork. Trust me, guys, it doesn't take that long whatsoever. I could put together a small piece of groundwork for Dave's Brummbar in about a 48-hour span. So don't get weighed down in the worrisome that these videos come out every 2 weeks and that sort of thing. Boom, our lamppost just hit the dirt. Don't get bogged down in all that sort of thing. The groundwork is only going to take you about 48 hours max. The tank hopefully will take you a heck of a lot longer than that. I mean, the way Dave paints is so beautiful. And those things don't come overnight. Don't try to rush your tank to get to a model show. Just chill out, build it for your own liking, and the model shows will fall into place. If you don't get it there to this model show, there's always another one. So don't overdo it. Don't speed build or anything like that. Just follow Dave's techniques, and it'll come to you very quickly. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you shortly. Take care.